Hello, everybody. Welcome to a voluntary view. Today, we've got a very special guest. We've got Mike Nimetz. Saying that right?
That's it.
Excellent, excellent. Now, Mike is involved with Agorapulco, which is, well, I'll let you tell us about what is Agorapulco, Mike.
All right. Well, it all kind of I live in Acapulco, and I've lived in Acapulco since 2015, which was a particularly interesting year because that was the first year that they had something called Anarchapulco. And that was Jeff Berwick was the guy that kind of initiated that. But we had a kind of a hardy crew of anarchists, ANCAPs, voluntarists, that kind of a crew of people that came down, and I think it was somewhere in the range of about 150 to 200 people. But we had some notable people. James Corbett was one of the people that were down here. Benny Wills. Obviously Jeff has his stuff, and we had some, a lot of the crypto kind of people. But in I had been looking for a place to live. I had been living in the United States in Florida, in the panhandle of Florida, Pensacola, for about 10 years. And, essentially, got there from Indiana because I was tired of, the baloney that was going on there. And I kind of looked for the place that treated you best within the United States. And so that was Florida. But in any case, that wasn't good enough. And so I had been traveling around the world. I'd gone to pretty much, a lot of different places with the idea of looking for some place that was free, and had a freedom-minded community and kind of culture. And that took me a lot of different places, but I wasn't able to find it. So in Acapulco in 2015 was that first really kind of circumstance since probably like the Ron Paul revolution of like 2008, 2007. There was a lot of open-minded people hanging around back then together. But in any case, 2015, we got here and we just decided to stay after. And then it went from, we're going to stay a couple weeks to a couple months to a couple years. And then, here it is. It's about 7 years now that I've been down here. And, Anarchapulco is kind of going through its own thing because it's grown into a big deal. And so there's always a kind of a opportunity to kind of fill the niche of that kind of original crew of people that were more and kind of this kind of the hippie vibe kind of people out there that are, not necessarily tied to too many things, that they don't really want to spend too much money, and so we created something called Agorapulco, and it went through a couple different iterations over the past few years. But the idea was it's a grassroots kind of community learning event, and we try and just kind of hold a calendar for people to do different things while they're down here in Acapulco. And there's Anarchapulco goes on for 5 days, but there's always a lot of there's a lot of time to get together with other people. And I've always been involved with Anarchapulco, and certainly the one thing that I got from that experience, and what a ton of people have told me about what they like the most about coming down to Acapulco and going to Anarchapulco, was the connection with like-minded people. And so that's what we really try and focus on with Agorapulco, is just, putting people into situations where they can make the connections and get to know the people they're sitting next to and really, see like where those ideas are, what kind of ideas they have and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so specifically this year, I'm doing something I call Respirar Acapulco, which is just a 2-day event on the 12th and the 13th of February. And I guess you could call it kind of a peace conference, a peace and learning conference focused on common sense and, collaboration. And the idea is to really kind of showcase that, the average person has a lot of abilities, and they're just not always recognized. And, the Anarchapulco brings like the star powered people, the people that everybody wants to sit and listen to. But for Agorapulco and for Respirar Acapulco, what we want to do is just kind of give people that chance to like blossom themselves, and and that's one of the things about learning is you can sit in a conference room and you can listen to somebody else and you're probably going to get about 5% of the message, but if you're participating, if you're like interacting with others, if you're actually teaching other people, you're learning at a pace that's like 12, 15 times that kind of capacity. And so that's kind of the thing that I want to encourage, and so that's what we're doing.
It sounds like something that's very much needed, especially after the past couple of years. People have been shut down and forced to rely on the government. So
yeah,
it seems like
there's a great deal of resources here in this community too, because we've got a lot of people. We're certainly getting a lot of people from Australia these days that are relocating to Acapulco. But we've got a wide variety of people, and certainly like Bob Podolsky is one of those people. He's written quite a number of books, but most famous for a book called Soul Bonding, and another book, what is it? It escapes me at the moment, but it's about the idea of the octalog and, like small horizontal group organization. And he kind of takes the Deming approach to like ethical business and ethical structures of doing business, and how that all works. And Bob is down here, and actually I was just helping him with a course that he's doing now called Harmony Enhancement, which is an excellent thing for groups of people and people that are getting together, families and all those kind of things, where they're encountering, conflict or what Bob calls disharmony. We've been trained, or society and kind of the media and everybody has trained us to expect disharmony. And the reality is that, the true nature of nature and ourselves is harmony. And it's kind of proven, if you look into kind of the Native American and some of the ancient civilizations and cultures, that we can exist in harmony, and it's a much different animal than what we've been exposed to. And I think, well, I'll just say that's kind of the delineation between the scarcity mindset and the abundance mindset, and essentially, being a slave or being a sovereign entrepreneur is that, that delineation between
kind of a conflict versus cooperation type of thing, or?
Well, yeah, that expectation of disharmony and the expectation of distrust versus the expectation of harmony and trust, and that those are the things that lead to abundance.
It sounds like you'd definitely be happier too with the expectation that people are basically good instead of that everyone's a rat and you can't trust anybody. Doesn't sound like any good way to live.
Yeah. Nope. Yeah, I think at least there should be a choice.
Yeah. Now, speaking of good ways to live, it sounds like you went to Acapulco for the Anarchapulco and then you just stayed there and didn't come back. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And we were kind of on we were expecting to go on it was my girlfriend and I, and we were expecting to kind of go on a tour of, pretty much Latin America, because we had tried to go into Canada the year before and gotten thrown out of Canada kind of abruptly. And, that was just an experience that for my girlfriend, she was not an anarchist. She was not a voluntarist at that time. But going through that experience, she was like, whoa, I can't believe this is the way things are, and that really did, make a big change for her. And then coming down here for an anarchist convention was something that she was willing to try, because prior to that, she was like, no, I'm not going to Mexico. There's just no way.
Yeah, sometimes it takes that kind of shock to wake people up and make them realize. I understand. So how was it then going from living in the US to living down in Mexico? Is that a big change? A lot of different things to get used to?
Well, I mean, the beautiful thing is it's a lot less expensive, so you can cut your expenses tremendously. and get along quite nicely. You know, the quality of life, if you kind of let go of some of the kind of American standards of what things you need, you can really, really pare down what you need, you know, as far as a cost of living. And, you know, Acapulco is super abundant. There's just so many things as far as, you know, like tropical fruits and vegetables and stuff like that, that just kind of grow here, you know, just out of the blue kind of thing. And so you end up with a circumstance where there's no end to the food supply here, you know.
Wow.
And for the most part, you know, one of the things that you know, most people are unfamiliar with is that there's like 300,000 edible species of plant, for example, that is out there on the planet as we know it today. And for the most part, only about 30 or 40 have been commercialized, you know, because they're transportable.
Mhm.
And so when you like throw out the transportable thing, then you get this whole new group of food to draw from, and that's another thing that makes Acapulco really, you know, fun and exciting, is like there's always this discovery of neat new things, and certainly foods and taste. I just got a ton of stories of you know, like new fruits, especially fruits down here,
Mhm.
that look pretty scary, but then you try them and you're like, holy cow, this is like, you know,
Mhm.
this is like a candy. It's so good, you know.
That's neat. I've seen some of those, like using internet search for weird fruits, and like they're covered with spikes and things like
Yeah,
that, but I've never gotten to
yeah,
try them before. So that's really neat. So
yeah. There's some great ones.
is Acapulco, I don't know much about it. Is it like a travel hub, a lot of people coming and going, or is it a pretty peaceful, stable community?
Well, Acapulco has been kind of a it's kind of been at the wrong end of the stick as far as a economic warfare within Mexico and kind of the tourist industry in Mexico. And so, you know, the World Bank was behind kind of the investments of like Cancun and Puerto Vallarta many years ago. And so those cities and those resort towns kind of sprang up on land that was basically, you know, bought by the World Bank. And so to get people to go there, they had to chase them out of Acapulco. And so for the, you know, probably the past 30 or 40 years, they've kind of created every excuse that they possibly can to, you know, to steer people away from Acapulco. And so the, you know, what used to be a, you know, like the premier world city for, you know, stars and celebrities and political figures and everything else, you know, 40, 50 years ago, just like disappeared off the map. And, you know, but, uh, but it's, you know, with, even with that kind of a situation, the people haven't given up, you know. And it's certainly this COVID thing, you know, they really tried to squeeze the people and put them, you know, pressure them by really wrecking the economy, what was left of the economy, with you know, the tourist industry, and kind of just basically shutting it down at the, you know, the main points of the of, you know, the times when Acapulco derives most of their income. And they still, man, these people are so resilient and so collaborative that it didn't matter, man. People are still happy. People are just, you know, because they got more time, they're spending more time with their family, they're going to the beach more, you know. But you know, they don't have the same kind of situation that most people have in the world. They have a place to live, they have plenty of food, they really don't have to worry about a lot of the things that most people have to worry about, because, you know, because they have been in a situation where like money has not been easy to come by. They've just went on about their life in different ways, you know, and so they do a lot of things quite a bit differently. But it's a great place to be a voluntarist and
Nice.
anarchist,
Yeah,
because they don't really respect any of what most people consider the authority.
yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like they're a lot less dependent on the systems that are in place, but more self-reliant. And that's good, because up here in the US, we're looking at a lot of empty, bare shelves at grocery stores. And in winter, you can't grow your own food in most of the United States at all, but especially in winter.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is one of the things about a culture that has common sense is kind of a centerpiece. They, as soon as like the COVID crisis started and the economy started tanking, for these people, most of them went and got chickens and just started having chickens and eggs and stuff like that, and then going out and rooting out in the forest and stuff and looking for exotic fruits and stuff and bringing them to the marketplace. And man, I'm telling you, Walmarts here in town, we got a couple Walmarts here in town. They were basically empty. They were shunning people because, hey, if you don't wear a mask, you can't come in. We only got one person limit and all these other baloney things. But you go down to the central marketplace, they didn't care if you didn't have any masks. They didn't care if you were standing next to each other. And man, that place was booming.
Oh, that sounds
There was
fantastic.
everything was going in the opposite direction. And that's the thing that's also really neat about Acapulco is that there's like a barrier to inflation. Like if the Walmarts and the big multinational grocery stores try and raise their prices, they got to compete with the locals, and the locals basically have an unending abundance of food supply. And so they can't do it.
Yeah, that is nice. So
Yeah.
most of the restrictions, I'm curious, were they like being imposed by the government? What is the government presence like there in Acapulco?
Well, for Westerners, it looks like it's a banana republic kind of situation, where you got soldiers in the streets and stuff like that. But if you actually like look beyond what looks like the show, and that's what I would call it because it's just a show going on, is there is nobody in charge. There's a kind of a balance of power between, what some people call cartels, but you could also call them, other kinds of groups that you could call them almost mutual aid groups in some cases. But yeah, they are cartels, but they're cartels that are like community cartels that like look out for their community, and so it's kind of an interesting balance because you do have government figures. You got a mayor, you got a police chief, you got those, and then you've got the military president, you've got Mexican Marines, you got Mexican Army units here, you got state police units here, you got federales, which are federal police. You got a bunch of different things, but they're actually kind of watching each other. They're scared of each other because each one is a particular faction, and even in those situations, there's a lot of compromised people in the thing. And so it leads to everybody kind of being very uneasy, even the powerful people. And that's really actually, it probably sounds like the Wild West, but that's really.
That's true. I was thinking what makes the state is that monopoly on the use of violence. And it sounds like they don't quite have that monopoly there, that there are other groups that are almost, if not as powerful, and it just maintains kind of a perhaps precarious balance.
And there is Mexico as a government is a failed state. There's just no two ways about it. And that's why Mexico is the best place to go. And it's the most open country in the world right now, is because the government just cannot enforce the law or whatever they try and make the law, so they've got this real tight balancing act that they've got to play where they look like they're doing what the other governments are doing, but at the same time, they know like they can't go too far, And so, that's, you see the president of Mexico, he gets out there and he sounds like he's almost like a freedom fighter, he's like, screw the COVID, I don't care, I'm not wearing a mask. And then, next thing you know, he takes a shot, and so he's like playing both sides of the terrain there. And he is a puppet. There's no doubt he's a puppet of the U.S. government. So whatever the U.S. government tells him to do, he's got to do it. But he still doesn't. He is very careful about what he says to the Mexican people, because for the most part they know that the Mexican government is like an occupying army,
Hmm.
and they don't, you know, they don't trust them.
Hmm. It's an interesting way to think about it.
But then the other thing is that you've got this great grapevine kind of existence, because family is like the number one authority in uh, Acapulco and for the most part the rest of Mexico. I would say that like the bigger cities like Mexico City, for example, you know, has adopted a much more American like city atmosphere where they have a much greater respect for local police and stuff like that. But for the most part, you know, the rest of Mexico, you know, their family is number one, you know. And so like if there's a choice between the family and the government, it's the family, and there's just no two ways about it. And so then that provides like this great network, you know, grapevine network where you know, a great deal of information and kind of connections goes back and forth. So like a, you know, like a, if the government ordered a military unit to attack, you know, something, uh, more than likely, if somebody that they're trying to attack is a family member of, you know, then more than likely that attack is going to be delayed or, you know, readjusted or, you know, whatever. But, you know, the whole thing is just going to be a, you know, almost a show and not really actually, you know, enforced.
Hmm. So less of that, less of the government versus the people, because the people are so tightly knit, it sounds like,
Yes.
that it's difficult to break into that with the
Yeah.
force of the state.
Yeah.
Sounds like the
Yeah.
perfect place to have a community of agorists and anarchists.
Well, and you know, and that's another thing, that like they don't have the rot of like a welfare system. You know, I mean,
Mm.
they do have like a minuscule welfare system, but it's you know, it like people have to work to make a living to survive, and so that does make a big difference in people's ability to, you know, think and you know, have common sense and certainly be entrepreneurial. That's definitely another thing about this culture is they're they're just ingrained with entrepreneur, you know.
Absolutely. It sounds like it. I mean, just from what you were saying, if the prices go up or if you can't get food, well, you go find it. And if you have extra, you go take it to the market and sell it to someone else. It's
Yeah.
not thinking who's going to take care of me now that this is happening, but I'm
Yeah.
going to go and
Yeah.
get it done.
And if you look at Acapulco as far as its location, it's really the center of North and South America, or, you know, it's within that region, but it functioned as the West Coast port of the entire North and South continent. And so to some degree, it is like the meeting place and the marketplace for, you know, for both continents. Because, you know, like if you're up in Alaska or something like that and you want to, you know, you want to sell your stuff to the most amount of people, well, you know, take it halfway to the center, to the marketplace, you know. And so in a lot of ways Acapulco has functioned in that fashion. And I don't know how long. I mean, because they've destroyed a lot of the history here in Acapulco and you know, most of Latin America. So to a large extent, we don't really know what actually has happened here. But you know, what you can glean and what you can see and kind of the people and their culture and stuff like that, and just how they behave. There's a great deal of indication that this was the marketplace for, you know, the entire you know, Western Hemisphere.
It's really neat. And it makes sense being so centrally located. And is it right next to any big rivers or the coast or?
There's a couple rivers here, and certainly there's a, you know, access to the central plain, which is, you know, where Mexico City is.
Mm,
And
okay.
so that was, you know, when the Spanish came, uh, they pretty much everything that they got from the Pacific and the Far East came through Acapulco and then went across land to Veracruz and then to Spain.
Hmm, nice. So, how you, as an immigrant from the United States, how are you treated by the local Mexican folks? Are they friendly or kind of
Yeah,
suspicious?
they're incredibly friendly and kind, and certainly if you look, you know, because that's one of the things that's just kind of, you know, the circumstance. But you know, when when Acapulco had all the celebrities and stuff like that, this place was just like the streets were paved with gold. And then, going through 30 or 40 years of economic downturn, a lot of the well-to-do people moved on. But for the most part, this place is just so beautiful and so connected to nature. It's people have a hard time like selling out and leaving, so they just kind of kept their place, and then maybe they moved to Mexico City, but then they come back for 2 or 3 months a year or whatever, and so it's just got a much different attitude. But then talking about kind of like the way that people have like suffered along through economic downturn, they've turned to collaboration and working with each other. In a lot of cases, that's the best thing that you can do. If you got some hardship and you work together, it just doesn't get any better than that. Like if you look back in your life and you look at the times when you had challenges and you had other people around you to help you with those challenges, those were some of the best times, and that's kind of the thing that Acapulco has. And then, as far as how they treat expats, because of the economic downturn, a lot of the tourists that they get are from Mexico City, and they really haven't had a great hasn't really had a great reputation. They figure that like a Westerner that comes down to Acapulco spends about $1,000 if they're here for like a week, whereas if a Mexico City resident comes down here, that's probably like $100 that they're going to spend, and so they throw they throw trash around, and they're kind of unruly. They get a little too drunk and stuff like that. And so the locals, they don't even really like their main clients these days. But when they see a Westerner, they're like, oh, come on, and they do everything they can to solve whatever problem you got. And that's another beautiful thing, is that they're willing to listen. And they're willing to, like, hey, you need this taken care of, you need that taken care of, they'll figure out a way to take care of that stuff. But then that also kind of amplifies that grapevine network, because everybody is kind of paid on commission. So like, instead of like like what you would typically see in a city, like you got internet, menu of services. Here it's hard to find that, like you can't always find what you're looking for in Acapulco on the internet. You just got to ask people, and then they kind of tell their friend and their friend and so forth, and then they get a commission from doing that. But that that keeps it out of the hands of the government.
Exactly.
And so again, they have a really it's a real savviness that I don't think most Westerners really notice. But it's
like
kind of like a disobedient servant in a way, when it comes to how they deal with the government, and they just like, yeah, okay, they agree with whatever the government says, but then they just kind of, they do their work real slow, and the government finally just says, ah, to hell with it, I got other things I could be doing.
I see.
So it's a rather interesting strategy, but I do enjoy it, and I love walking around here and just talking to people, because it's always an interesting conversation, because it's like, if you ask them, what do you think about the government? Sorry, I mean, curse, but that's the sentiment that they have, and I'm like, yeah.
It sounds like multiple ways it's a good place to have the Anarchapulco and Agorapulco happen.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the locals would be interested in it too, because I bet they get a lot of business from folks showing up, which is
Oh,
fun.
absolutely. And that's kind of one of the things that really makes, the situation that we have with Anarchapulco and Agorapulco and the anarchist and voluntarist is you can go to a place and you can influence an economy in a really big way, and gain those people's loyalty like nowhere else. And so that's certainly why I advocate for Acapulco, and why I try and direct people as far as investment property is concerned. This is the place, because it has so many advantages, and it's been it's already been through the ringer. Like, what everybody else is experiencing, this year or last year, well, they've been doing that for 40 years. So they're pretty good at it, at this point. And so that's, those are the people that are going to lead us out the other end.
It's a good way of looking at it. So now, speaking of leading the Anarchapulco, how would you describe it? Is it like a retreat or a conference or an expo? What type of thing is it?
Yeah, Anarchapulco is a conference.
Okay.
But it does have, so like you've got like your typical conference where you got people speaking, from, I don't know if it's 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning until probably 5 or 6 p.m. at night. And then they usually have some kind of evening event of some sort. Sometimes those are extras. More than likely, I mean, these last few years, Anarchapulco has been one that it's kind of looked for a particular market, and that continues to kind of go up in price. And so like this year, the tickets are, I think, $1,250, for the 5-day event. And I think they give you food and all that other stuff. So they give you a lot of things to include with that. But, why they do that is because then they bring in the big names too. They can pay for the speaker fees of some of the larger people.
I see.
And that, those are the people that people want to hear, so, I think it's great. I mean, I've participated in it every year. I led the volunteers for a couple of years. I've always kind of been in the background, trying to make sure everything works properly and we get things off. It was really kind of a slap together kind of weekend thing. The first year we did it, everybody was we kind of got here and it was like, who's going to do this? I don't know. Who is going to do that? All right, well, I guess it's going to be me, and that's kind of how it really got started. But then, it has grown into something that, there's, I think 2019, we had, 2,800 people here. And, it's a pretty, at that point, it's pretty big. Now, of course, since then, we've had the COVID thing. And I think last year it was probably, I don't know, 300 or 400 people here, but, with all the travel restrictions. Well, and they did give an online, option. So people can, they can choose that as well. And that's certainly one of the things. And I do have a coupon code for anybody if they want to buy online ticket, or if they want to come down and buy the ticket, I can get them 10% off for that if they want to do that. I'll provide you that code.
Nice, thank you. I'll get that in the description for sure. So how for this year, expecting more people than the 300 or 400, or keeping it about the same?
I'm thinking it's probably going to be in the 500 to 1,000 range.
A little more.
It does seem like there's a lot of people that are kind of thinking about what is going to happen in the United States. Is it going to look like the USSR in a couple of years, or is it going to look something, is it going to go the other way? I don't know. That's why I left the United States in 2015, and I was ready to go in 2014. And in fact, I went to Australia and New Zealand, I think in 2008 or 2009, because I was looking for a place that, because I just didn't like the way things were, the direction they were headed.
Right. Glad you didn't stop in Australia.
Well, I kind of recognized that there was a similar, the government was in a similar state to what the United States was like. Yeah. And, so I had to keep looking. But I do feel like there is a choice to be made, and I certainly want to provide an option for people. I think, Acapulco is the place that I know, and the place that I think is the best. I spent a lot of time looking for the best place, and I think this is it. But, for people that are interested in that kind of thing, and, maybe they just want to sit out for the next few years and just sit on the sidelines and take a vacation and kind of relax and get into like a, natural environment where nobody's going to be hassling you. If they just want to do that, or if they want to just do that 6 months a year or 3 months a year or whatever, just to recharge themselves from the craziness that's going on in the rest of the world, that option is certainly available. And that's one of the things that's here.
Now, I'm curious, what kind of resources, money-wise, would a person need to be able to do that? Like, buy a place or rent a place for a few months down in Acapulco?
Well, my recommendation is you come down and check it out, but you can live really, really cheaply. I've seen people live on less than $100 a month here,
Oh,
and not, not starve to death, not like live on the street on a cardboard box or something like that. Actually, in a place where there's a
right.
roof and they got running water and electricity and
Nice. So
even
not like
internet.
not a reed hut type of thing with a
Right.
thatched roof, but okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can go that cheap. Now, I'm not saying that's a great situation. I live in a circumstance that I you could definitely do for like $500 a month, and have full blown internet and electricity, and I don't actually use air conditioning. I just got a fan. I love the environment as far as that is concerned. I don't like going back and forth between air conditioning and so forth. But for those people that can do that, that's probably going to tack up the price just a little bit. But then if you really want to live like like what a celebrity might want to live like, you could probably do that for 2,000, 2,500 a month.
Yeah. So that's pretty good. So maybe like 5 or 6 thousand, you could come down and like live high on the horse for
Yeah,
maybe 2 or 3 months.
definitely,
Nice.
definitely. Yeah.
And it sounds like the Agorapulco and Anarchapulco would be a great place to start, at least to get
Yeah.
used to the place.
Yeah, and we've got a established community of people. It's kind of gone through its iterations, and that's kind of one of the other things that we've spent some time learning is how to build community. We've had a lot of misfires when it comes to what can go wrong in community, and learning from those things is certainly important. And not making those mistakes can make a big difference. As far as quality of life, because that's definitely what I'm after is always quality of life, getting the
Yeah,
most value, and we've got that covered too.
nice. It's interesting how, I mean, once upon a time, those skills must have just been what people had and how people lived all the time. But people have become so dependent on the government to do those kinds of things that they have no idea how to do it themselves unless they go through those bumps in that learning process to build their own
Yeah.
communities.
Well, the small town community environment that existed, say, prior to like 1950, or the 1950s in the United States, people had a kind of an interdependence and kind of understood how that worked from that small town experience. But over that 50 years, those small towns have, the people have left for the big cities and the suburbs, and and a lot of the family connections have been disconnected. I know my family in particular, my father, when he was a kid, they would get together every Sunday, the entire family. There was like 50, 60 people, family reunion every Sunday. And they were all kind of farmers and small business people, and they pretty much ran the town. And that was because they were together, and they worked together, and they helped each other out. They shared resources to make sure that everybody succeeded. And 2 generations later, we got the family is scattered all over the planet, and we don't really connect with each other very often. We don't really have any collaboration
Yeah,
per
even
se.
even with modern technology, I mean, we're thousands of miles apart, we're talking
Yeah.
right now, but it's hard to have that level of cooperation. Even if you can communicate, it's hard to cooperate, especially in the same physical way over the internet or over a telephone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the media and the movies and stuff like that, they've done a pretty good job of propagandizing, the past, and really kind of making people resentful of the past and resentful of a lot of the traditions of the past. They demonized a lot of that stuff, and a lot of that stuff also had valuable stuff, that related to those things. And people just did not remember what they lost, as
Yeah,
they moved from where they were to some new place. They,
yeah, just
kind
talk
of
of
got,
the past is bad, all that old stuff. We've got modern stuff, so it's good, it's scientific or
right.
whatever, but the wisdom went out, with all some of the stuff that wasn't so great about the past. But like you said, a lot of stuff was great. The old time folk wisdom and good old down to earth common sense. A lot of it's gone nowadays.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it sounds like one point of the Agorapulco and Anarch. That's a lot of Apulcos to say right after another. It sounds like
Sorry.
one point of it might be to try to get people together and even over long distances establish that community and get some of that thinking going again. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've got thousands of contacts from people that I've met here in Acapulco that, they don't live here, but they were here for a week, or they were here for a month, or they were here for 3 months, and we got to know each other. And I typically, over the past 6 years, I've thrown the big party for the Anarchapulco, uh, the big unofficial party up until last year, which I did the official party for last year. But typically, I've done the unofficial party, and we had 300-400 people in my house at the same time, and it was just magic, because a lot of these people never had that circumstance where, like, everywhere they looked were people that thought similar to the way they did, and so people were just having conversations like crazy. And kind of my role as the host was just that I would introduce myself to each person, and kind of get an idea of who they are, where they're coming from, what kind of things are they're interested in. And I'd say, hey, I know somebody that, you're doing this or you're doing that. I know somebody, let me introduce them to you, and then I'd introduce them. And then people would be chattering and chattering and chattering. And I typically I have we have some entertainment and stuff like that. And I try and get everybody to quiet down. And it's just impossible. It's just impossible to get people to stop talking, because they're so enthralled by this experience,
That
And
sounds
so,
nice.
at the end of the night, and typically that can go to 5 or 6 in the morning, I ask people as they're leaving, how was the evening and stuff, and it's pretty much across the board. They're just like, oh man, it was so good, you know. And so that has led to a lot of contacts.
Nice. Well, that sounds fantastic. It's hard to find people who you can really connect with on that level. I mean, even, yeah, it's just hard. I work in a hospital,
Mm,
and I think the government has had so much control over health that trying to find people who believe in, at least openly, question what the government is doing is very difficult. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so that sounds great, being able to find people who think in similar ways.
Well, that's another benefit of Mexico. I mean, Acapulco's got it as well, but alternative medicine, and really kind of a focus on, the real rational science of health, is something that's, I think is a a big sector of the future of business. Is kind of recouping people's health from all this baloney that has gone on. Whether you're a vaxxer or anti-vaxxer, there's a whole bunch of things that you're adding to your body that are probably not healthy for you, in various ways, and just detoxing from a lot of that stuff. Plus the food that they're feeding to your mind, is not good. And then, the heart as well. Like one of the things that it strikes me down here a lot of times is the kindness. It's almost the opposite of like the modern world when it comes to how people behave, because if I've witnessed this myself, like in a very weird situation, but they had imposed, this is early in my time down here, but they had done a martial law kind of imposition here. There was a drug war was going on down here, and there shootings and stuff like that. And so they had imposed a curfew. And so we were out after the curfew going across town, and we're coming up the mountain, a little mountain road. There was a guy on a scooter coming the other way, and he lost control and crashed in the middle of the road. And every single car pulled over and ran over to the guy, picked him up, picked up his stuff, brushed him off, put his motorcycle back together, put all his stuff back on, back in his box and everything like that. And, this is in a supposedly in a time where like everybody could be, in trouble if they were out there,
Mhm. Wow,
they didn't
that's
care.
fantastic.
They just took care of the person. And man, every year I get so many stories of people that come down here for the first time and they do something, kind of goofy. They leave their wallet or they leave, something important somewhere.
Mhm.
And then the people, tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, you left this on the table, or I had a couple situations where like the ATM, the machines here, they have two different types. One shoots your card out first and then your money, and the other one shoots your money out and then your card. And so I had gone to this one where I thought it shot the money out and then the card, and it shot the card out, and I was like, oh man, and I walked away and it shot the money out then, and
Ah,
so we're talking like $500, which is probably like 2 months of pay for most people here. The person behind me, they grabbed the money and they chased me down, and they gave me the money, all the money. And so then I offered them, like 500 pesos, man. I was like, Jesus, man, thanks so much. And
mhm.
then, no, that's all right,
Oh,
And
that's
then,
fantastic.
and that's been repeated dozens of times by other people here where they've left their wallet or they've done similar things like that.
Mm.
And every single time, whoever is there, does the good deed.
Wow. It seems to me that kind of attitude and that kind of behavior and outlook is correlated with their lack of dependence on the government. Because
Yeah.
one thing that we talk about, because we're of course in for the charity, is that when there's the government system, people can always think, oh, someone else is going to take care of that. Yeah, I pay my taxes. That's what such and such a government agency is for. It's not my problem.
Yeah.
But if you have that attitude of, I need to take care of things, then I also need to help other people, and then other people can help me, and ties back into that community that you were talking about.
Right. Yeah. And that's that thing about the grapevine too, is because like you don't necessarily know who you're dealing with. Sometimes, the guy that you're dealing with on the street might be the brother-in-law of the head of the cartel or something like that. And so you've got to kind of keep in mind that, like anybody could know anybody. And so you got to just treat everybody respectfully. And lo and behold, that turns out to be a pretty good place to be.
Nice, a golden rule type of thing.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, Mike, I have one more question. So
Okay.
I asked my wife, so what do you want to know about this Agorapulco stuff? And the first thing she said was, is it family friendly?
I would say yes. I mean,
Nice.
whenever you get a lot of anarchists together or voluntarists together, there's a wide range of interest. I would say, so you got to keep that in mind. But that's one of the things about Acapulco that is really very interesting is there's like enough space for everybody, and there's all kinds of family friendly things to do here. It's not like everybody's just pounding beers and drinking shots of tequila or whatever. you know the there's there's an opportunity for everybody. And I don't know what Anarchapulco has in store for the kids this year. Usually we kind of partner up with a local orphanage, and they have anywhere from 60 to 80 kids usually, that we kind of entertain for a day, and they come in and do like robotics or computer stuff, or and
Wow.
we've definitely established a relationship where now we've pretty much got an ongoing relationship. We built a earth home, no one of those uh kind of maintainable houses that like doesn't have any God, I can't think of the name of the thing. But in any case, we did that as a project, but it was to benefit the orphanage. And so then the kids have like watched as the progress has gone on for the past year in building that place. And of course you got solar power, and you got all these different things like gravity fed water system, plants, because you can grow your own plant or grow your own food within the house and all that kind of stuff. So
Wow.
the the kids have been exposed to that. So then they've also had this opportunity to kind of learn English too. And so we've incorporated that into it as well.
Neat.
And I can just, that's probably one of the funnest things to do, is to go to the orphanage, and certainly like if you had a family, bring your kids. I'm sure they're going to be really blown away by that experience, because like a couple years ago, we had a circumstance where we brought in everybody, and they talked about their profession in front of all the kids. And we had race car drivers, we had airline pilots, we had a whole bunch of different things. And like every time they'd explain to the kids, this is what this guy is, and then it'd be, whoa, and then they'd be drawing pictures of stuff. And
that sounds great.
And that their orphanage is right on the beach, so it's a great place,
wow.
In that regard as well, because you can go to the beach and have all that fun that entails as well.
That is nice. Do many people bring their own kids when they come to Agorapulco?
Well, Agorapulco has only been really, like, this is year number 2, and we actually had a different name the year before that. So it's really kind of like the 3rd year to some degree. It's been one in which we're really like all inclusive. I don't know if are you familiar with John Taylor Gatto?
Yes.
And his books.
Mm-hmm.
There's a particular book of his where he talks about, it's Alexis de Tocqueville's representation of the United States from, I don't know when was the year, 1835 or something like that.
Yeah.
And he said, America, they've completely eliminated adolescence. is the quote that John Taylor Gatto puts out in his book. And I think that might be the underground history of American education, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, I think that's kind of the way we want to treat the children, or at least that's the way I would think they would want to be treated, is just like other adults. We try and give them that opportunity where if they want to go and play, go for it. But if you want to like listen to cool stuff, or you think there's something interesting, you can participate in that too. Yeah,
treat them as real people instead of some kind of weird, almost pet type status.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, well, they are the future, man. We got to treat them respectfully.
Sounds like Anarchapulco and Agorapulco and the Respirar Acapulco sound like really, really interesting and fun and important events. So I'm really excited. It sounds like it's going to be great. I don't think we'll be able to go this year,
I'll just add here, because I just had a conversation yesterday. I was talking to a Cherokee Indian yesterday from the Cherokee Nation, and we're talking about kind of incorporating like a peace council, a council for peace and common sense. And we're going to bring in a couple other people. One is from the kingdom of Shambhala, essentially a Tibetan Buddhist sect. And it's amazing how much in common they have. Their ideas as far as their society is one in which they'll welcome anybody, as long as you kind of respect the rules. And so for the Cherokee, it's kind of the principled people is the way they like, what their society is about. And for the Shambhala, it's the enlightened society, and so, we're certainly trying to pursue that idea of a discussion about what is the contract that we could agree to amongst ourselves in regard to like an alternative society or a parallel society to this one that actually has a real sovereign nature to it. It is recognized by the supposed governments, that have diced all this stuff up into their particular jurisdictions. Shambhala is one. The kingdom of Shambhala is one. It's a borderless kingdom, and so the idea of jurisdiction in that kind of a circumstance is something that people should really think about, because there is that opportunity, I think, in an enlightened society where you can make a choice of which jurisdiction you want to put yourself under.
Yeah, it makes me think of Hoppe and of his writings about, how does he put it? Not a private government, but you know what I mean, where people can choose which system of law they fall under, which jurisdiction, as you put
Yes.
it. Really, it struck me as you were talking that the Cherokee and the Shambhala being from completely different cultures, opposite sides of the world, but still having these same basic ideas. To me, it kind of points to how these ideas underlying agorism and voluntarism aren't just crazy things that someone came up with, but they're getting closer and closer to the natural laws of human existence,
Yes.
like the law of gravity and all those physical laws. Human nature and its interactions have the same kind of laws. And it seems like the Agorapulco and Anarchapulco might be a great place to keep trying to get closer to those.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. And to all your listeners out there, and certainly yourself as well, and your family,
Mm-hmm.
we
Yeah.
definitely are putting out the welcome mat
Oh,
for open-minded, freedom-minded, liberty-minded people, that want community. That's what we're after.
fantastic. Now, if someone who's listening has the means, is it too late to make it this year? Because it's happening in February, right?
Yeah. Well, Respirar Acapulco and Agorapulco is usually kind of the weeks before and after, but Anarchapulco is the 14th through the 18th of February, and Respirar is the 12th and the 13th.
Okay.
Being that we're kind of in this situation this year where, people are like, there's a lot of big questions out there as far as, what to do next. This is going to be one in which we're going to extend Agorapulco from now until the next one in 2023, with the idea that, whatever we do this year, we're just going to plan for what we're going to do next year. And then the whole time is just going to be different things that we can do to add up to a bigger, cooler, awesomer event. And in a lot of cases, we do have that, the laboratory to experiment. And so, there's a lot of different projects out there that I'm definitely courting to have an example in Acapulco, so that people, when they come down, they can see how these projects can work. We got something called BCTC. We got something called Wellness Empowered, which is kind of a health consolidator kind of thing, where you can get access to a lot of different kind of health services and so forth. And there's we got a retreat center and kind of a sanctuary where people can go when they're just too stressed out from the world, and take a couple weeks off and get back to nature and just kind of relax in your inner child kind of realm. But there's a lot of those kind of things that are coming to Acapulco, and we're recruiting those kind of people to be here. And certainly a lot of the new industries, crypto and that kind of thing as well. We certainly got a lot of those people down here already, but it is, there's just a bunch of opportunities and things just starting to bud.
Oh, fantastic. So it sounds like this year would be great to go, but also building up to next year is going to be even better.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're going to put links down in the description so that all you people listening, you can find out more about Agorapulco and Anarchapulco and Respirar Agorapulco.
Love those rolling R's.
Yes. I gotta prepare myself for a moment first, but I can do it. So Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been great talking with you.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate all the things that you do. And I definitely want to encourage you to continue to do the things that you do, because you are making a difference. I did listen to a couple of your podcasts, prior to this interview, and I got to say, you're doing a great job. And I'm loving the content you're putting out.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The more people listen, hopefully the more people will be a part of our charity efforts, or at least be inspired to help someone else on their own. So, all right. Thanks so much, Mike. You have a great day. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Okay, now I can stop the. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like what we do here, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and go over to our website where you can offer donations, request help us help people who are in need voluntarily. and we'll see you next time.